So I want you to just imagine waking up and the only way to power your home or, grow your food, the only way to keep your own heart beating is by making sure someone else is screaming in absolute agony.
Right. It's a completely staggering premise to engage with.
It really is. Like today for our deep dive, we're looking at the dark city of Camorra. And it's this place where the foundational resource keeping the entire civilization alive isn't agriculture or electricity or anything like that.
No, it's concentrated, industrialized suffering.
Exactly. I mean, it's just pure industrialized pain. And we're going to look really closely at the Hecatari, which are the witch cults of this dark city.
Yeah, we have to figure out exactly how a society takes brutal murder and elevates it into a divine and completely necessary performance.
Because it's not just for show, right?
Right. To really understand this, we have to completely discard our baseline understanding of how a civilization sustains itself.
Yeah, you have to throw all that out the window.
Exactly. Before we can even begin to dissect the gladiators themselves, we have to look at the psychological and physiological foundation of the Drukhari, the inhabitants of this city.
So for them, the line between pleasure and agony, it hasn't just been, blurred over time.
No, it has been erased entirely. The only verifiable truth in their entire existence is the sharp edge of a blade.
Which is just wild to think about. We're looking at a society's terrifying infrastructure of survival here.
Right, it's infrastructure. That's the perfect word for it.
So let's unpack this infrastructure concept a bit more, because when I first looked at the term they use, gladiatorial sisterhoods, my mind immediately went to, like, ancient Rome.
Sure, you think of entertainers.
Right. People putting on a bloody show just to distract the masses, keep the peasants happy. But the Hecatari are described as being second in prestige only to the ruling cabals.
Yeah, and you don't get to be second in command of an entire advanced civilization just by being a good circus act.
Exactly. You don't get that kind of power by just juggling swords.
No, you attain that level of prestige by controlling a monopoly on a critical resource.
Right.
The Drukhari, they possess this insatiable thirst for blood and sensation. But it goes far, far beyond just psychological sadism.
It's physical. Like feeding on the agony of others is a literal necessity for their survival, isn't it?
It is. Their physical and spiritual bodies actually require the ambient energy of suffering just to stave off extinction.
Wow. So they literally absorb it.
Exactly. Therefore, these witch cults and the arenas they operate, they are not just providing an evening's entertainment, they are providing a vital, carefully controlled mechanism for the whole society to feed.
Okay, so they're essentially a vital civic utility.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like the water filtration plant or the main power grid for a major metropolis, but instead of huge turbines pumping electricity through underground wires,
Bumping out pure concentrated agony.
right, just pumping it out to keep the population from dying. Because in our world, if the power grid goes down, traffic lights stop working and food spoils in the fridge.
But if these sisterhoods stopped putting on their nightly displays of violence, the dark city would literally starve to death.
That is just, it's so morbid to think about as a civic duty.
And the consequences of that starvation are apocalyptic. The source text describes these nightly displays as a feast of agonies.
A feast of agonies, man.
Yeah, and it's this feast that sates the spiritual hunger of the masses, which prevents total societal collapse.
Because we have to remember the scale of Camorra here. We're talking about a city that exists outside of normal reality, right?
Right, it's vast beyond human comprehension. It is just teeming with these hyper-predatory beings.
So the Hecataris are basically the only effective pressure valve.
Exactly. They are the agricultural sector and the power grid wrapped into one terrifying package.
So if that pressure valve fails, I mean, you have millions, maybe billions of these predators who suddenly just have no food source.
What's fascinating here is that they would immediately turn on each other. It would just be this absolute frenzy of starvation.
Just ripping each other apart in the streets.
Exactly. The society would consume itself from the inside out in a matter of days.
So the ruling cabals, they might hold the political and military might, they might have all the armies and the weapons, but they themselves rely on the witch cults to synthesize this life-sustaining agony.
They are completely dependent on them.
Which means managing this civic utility is arguably the most dangerous and important job in the whole city.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you control the agony supply, you hold an immense amount of leverage.
You can dictate terms to almost anyone.
Right. But managing something that volatile, something that critical, it means your leadership structure can't just be some loose collection of talented fighters.
It can't just be a fight club.
No, it has to be an absolute ruthless machine. It requires a level of organizational rigidity that leaves absolutely zero room for weakness.
Which brings us to the actual hierarchy, and here's where it gets really interesting for me.
The matriarchal aspects.
Yeah, because when you look at most sci-fi universes that have these brutal gladiatorial societies, the aesthetic is almost always exactly the same.
Giant guys with hammers.
Exactly. It's massive, heavily muscled brutes, roaring and relying on pure kinetic force to just bash their opponents to a pulp.
But Kimura completely subverts that expectation.
Right. The leadership of all witch cults is universally female. These are the succubi.
And right below them are their squad leaders, which are known as the Hecatrixes.
So you have this very strict chain of command.
You do, and the hierarchy filters up through a very intense selection process. A succubus will look at her most talented lethal Hecatrixes and basically handpick an elite clique of murderesses from among them.
And those are the blood brides, right?
Yes, the Hecatrix blood brides. And they are commanded by an officer known as a siren.
So the structure basically ensures that power is consolidated only among the absolute pinnacle of their kind.
Precisely. And the absolute pinnacle of that pinnacle is a figure named Lilith Hesperax.
Oh yeah, she's named as the succubus of the cult of strife.
Right, the undisputed mistress of the arenas.
But, I was trying to wrap my head around the underlying logic of why the society is entirely matriarchal in its gladiatorial sector, because it isn't just some arbitrary cultural tradition for them.
No, there's a very functional reason for it within their society.
Right. The rationale given is that females are able to more easily attain the pinnacle of poise and grace that this specific craft actually demands.
Yes, while the males in this society are valued more for their brute strength and, well, their utility in producing strong offspring.
It is a brilliant inversion of typical survival of the fittest mechanics, isn't it?
It really is. If we connect this to the bigger picture, in most primitive or violent cultures, brute strength dictates the hierarchy because the goal is simply to overpower and destroy your enemy as fast as you can.
Just smash them and move on.
Right. But remember the civic function of the Hecatari. Their goal isn't destruction. It's extraction.
Extraction of pain.
Exactly. Blunt strength is relegated to a secondary role because if you just, smash an opponent's skull with a hammer, the fight is over in 2 seconds.
The agony is fleeting.
Yes. You've ruined the harvest, essentially. It is highly inefficient.
So what they really prize above all else is the ability to choreograph the violence.
To extend it, yeah. To draw out the maximum possible sensory output from the victim over a long period.
And that requires surgical precision, hyperflexibility, and this just obsessive focus on grace.
It's not a military battalion.
No, it's a lethally competitive ballet company. Like, if you think about the prima ballerinas of our world, they possess immense coiled physical power, but it's entirely dedicated to perfect, fluid execution.
They're athletes in the purest sense.
Right. Now imagine if those prima ballerinas were also ruthless military generals fighting for control of a monopoly.
It's a terrifying thought.
It is. Brute strength might help you lift a heavy prop or something, but it doesn't help you execute a perfect, agonizing, hyper-lethal pirouette that keeps an audience of space vampires fed for another day.
And that leads into how one actually becomes the director of this ballet company. Because to rise to the rank of succubus, to sit at the very top of a cult, you cannot just be the most talented dancer.
You need more than just physical skill.
Much more. You rise through a very specific combination of martial prowess and ruthless cunning.
Because, talent in the arena doesn't protect you in the locker room.
Exactly. You have to understand that this is a meritocracy built entirely on paranoia.
Just looking over your shoulder constantly.
Always. If you only possess martial prowess, you are nothing but a highly effective tool to them. You're a blunt instrument.
And eventually, someone smarter will just use you or get rid of you.
Right. You will inevitably be outmaneuvered by a Hecatrix or a siren who actually possesses the political and social intelligence to orchestrate your downfall.
So to become a succubus, you must be a political mastermind.
You have to navigate the internal cutthroat politics of the blood brides every single day,
You're constantly anticipating assassinations and coups from your own squad leaders.
while simultaneously putting on a nightly performance that is spectacular enough to satiate a starving metropolis.
The cognitive load of that is just insane.
It's unfathomable for a human mind.
You are fighting literal life-or-death battles in the arena, extracting maximum agony from terrifying alien beasts or captured soldiers, all while mentally calculating whether the siren flanking you is about to plunge a dagger into your kidney the moment the crowd looks away.
If you miss a step, you die.
And if the crowd gets bored, the city starves, they riot, and you die.
The pressure is absolute. There is no off-season. There is no retirement.
Which really begs the question of logistics for me. If the only way to hold on to this immense political power is by being the undisputed center of attention forever, you can't just rely on natural talent.
No, natural talent degrades. Nerves fray.
Right. So how do they ensure this level of physical and mental perfection never slips? What actually makes a virtuoso of violence?
Well, they eliminate the variable of choice from the very beginning.
What do you mean by that?
A witch does not join a cult as a career change. It's not a job you apply for. They are subjected to this ecosystem from the moment they are born.
Oh, wow. From birth.
Yes. Their entire existence is described as a constant practice of their deadly craft.
Okay, so think about your standard childhood education, right? We have math tests, history essays, maybe some pop quizzes.
Standard stressors.
Yeah. Now imagine an educational curriculum where a failed pop quiz results in your literal dismemberment.
Every single day is a test of survival.
Right. Every sparring session, every agility drill, every lesson in anatomy from the time you can literally walk is a life or death scenario.
If you make a mistake, you don't get a bad grade. You are recycled into the agony grid.
You become the food.
Exactly. And the term virtuosos of violence is highly specific here.
Right. Because in music, a virtuoso is someone who has completely transcended the mechanics of their instrument.
They no longer think about where to place their fingers. The instrument is basically an extension of their nervous system.
And for the witch cults, the instrument is the physical body of their opponent.
Achieving that level of mastery requires thousands and thousands of hours of flawless, agonizing practice. They are honing a very specific methodology.
So if their primary function is to serve as, like, sommeliers of agony extracting highly refined, sustained pain rather than just causing a quick death, that drastically changes the tools they need.
It changes their entire arsenal.
Right, because if you're fighting in a hyper-advanced sci-fi setting, the logical choice of weapon would be, plasma cannons, railguns, lasers that can vaporize an enemy's torso from a mile away.
Means that end a threat instantly.
But the Hekatari focus on whips and blades, which, logically, bringing a knife to a laser fight seems like a terrible idea. Unless the knife serves a purpose, the laser literally can't.
And it does. A laser is a tool of extermination. But the Hekatari are engaged in a process of sustenance.
A heavy plasma blast that vaporizes an opponent instantly is a total failure of their art form.
It cauterizes the nerve endings. It destroys the brain before it can even register panic.
So it provides zero nourishment for the watching masses.
Exactly. Their weapons are engineered specifically to prolong and amplify agony.
So we aren't just talking about standard broadswords or, like, crude iron chains here.
Not at all. A blade used by a witch is likely honed to a monomolecular edge.
Meaning it can cut through almost anything on a cellular level.
Right, and it's designed to slip between armor plates and sever specific motor tendons without nicking a major artery.
Oh, because they need the victim alive?
Yes. The goal is to paralyze or hobble the victim while keeping them entirely conscious and fully capable of feeling pain.
That is horrifying. And the whips.
The whips are likely interlaced with neuroconductors or barbs that actively latch onto the nervous system. When a witch strikes, they aren't trying to cut a person in half. They're trying to play their nervous system like a violin.
This your physical restraint that must take is just terrifying to me.
It requires immense discipline.
Right. Imagine being in the middle of a chaotic, high-speed melee. Adrenaline is pumping, some alien is trying to bite your head off, and you have the opportunity to land a killing blow and end the threat instantly.
But you can't take it.
No, you have to actively choose not to. You have to forcefully pull your punch, calculate the trajectory of your blade to inflict a non-lethal but excruciating wound, and intentionally draw out a fight that could kill you at any second just to keep the audience entertained.
It requires a level of neurological and physical control that essentially borders on the impossible for any baseline biological entity.
Because nobody's reflexes are naturally that good while doing complex math about tendons and nerves.
Exactly. The reaction times needed to dodge lethal attacks while meticulously dissecting an opponent alive. It cannot be achieved purely through training, no matter how rigorous.
Which is why the Hekataris do not rely solely on their own biology.
Right. This brings us to the chemical factor.
The homunculi covens.
Yes. The witch cults are notorious for their heavy reliance on combat drugs supplied by these homunculi covens.
And these aren't just like simple stimulants or adrenaline shots.
No, these are bespoke, hyper-complex bioalchemical compounds. They're designed to push Drukhari physiology far, far beyond its natural limits.
Heightening their speed and dexterity to godlike levels.
Yes, it gives them the edge they absolutely need to survive the arena.
But introducing a supplier into this ecosystem fundamentally changes the power dynamic, doesn't it?
It exposes a massive structural vulnerability.
Yeah, because the Hecataria are this insanely prestigious sisterhood, basically keeping the city alive.
Yeah.
But they can't do it without their performance enhancers.
And the chemists, the homunculi, hold the only keys to the pharmacy.
That has to cause some friction.
It's a highly transactional symbiotic relationship, but it's a symbiosis built entirely on extortion and dependency.
Because a succubus might be the undisputed master of her arena, right? She can bring a crowd of millions to their feet.
But behind closed doors, she has to negotiate with these covens.
She has to ensure a constant supply of these godlike drugs, because the moment her witches lose that chemical edge, they slow down, they die in the arena, the spectacle fails, and the whole cult falls from power.
It's a brilliant check and balance, really, in a horrific sort of way.
Yeah, the cabals have the military might, the witch cults have the cultural influence and the monopoly on the agony supply, but the homunculi control the biological infrastructure that makes the cults actually function.
It forces all these factions to cooperate while constantly holding knives to each other's throats.
It weaves this web of codependence that prevents any single faction from entirely overtaking the Dark City.
Exactly. So we now have the complete profile of the performer, right?
Yeah, raised from birth in a lethal meritocracy, wielding tools of surgical torture, and enhanced by reality-bending bioalchemy.
Now we need to look at the stage itself. Where do these virtuosos actually perform?
The arenas,
Yeah.
which is their home turf, but calling them arenas feels like a massive understatement.
It really does do them justice.
Like, these aren't dirt pits with some wooden bleachers around them.
They are architectural masterpieces, and this ties directly back to the incredible wealth and prestige of the cults we talked about.
Right. Every individual witch cult operates out of its own unique arena, don't they?
Yes. And the design, the scale, and the lethality of the arena are direct representations of that specific cult's power and aesthetic philosophy.
They are monuments to their own specific brand of cruelty.
Exactly.
So imagine a massive Olympic stadium, but engineered by a sadistic physicist. You aren't just dealing with a flat piece of ground. You have to navigate environmental hazards that actively want to kill you.
The text specifically lists gravity wells, spinning blades, and kinetic inversion snares.
The inclusion of these hazards is so crucial for understanding the spectacle. I really want to stop and look at the kinetic inversion snare for a second, because just the physics implied by that name are mind-bending.
It's a horrifying concept.
It really is. This isn't just a bear trap that snaps shut on your leg. If we think about what kinetic inversion actually means, imagine you are a massive alien gladiator, right? And you lunge at a witch with all your strength.
Moving at 30 or 40 miles an hour.
Exactly. If you step on one of these snares, the trap doesn't just hold you in place. It takes all of your forward momentum, all of your kinetic energy, and violently, instantaneously snaps it in the exact opposite direction.
The biological trauma of that would be catastrophic.
Right. Your skeleton would try to go backward at 40 miles an hour while your organs are still traveling forward.
It would shatter your spine instantly.
It would liquefy your insides using your own physical force against you.
It is a stunning weaponization of physics. And the gravity wells serve a very similar purpose.
How does it work?
We can conceptualize them as localized zones, where the gravitational pull is suddenly magnified tenfold, crushing a combatant flat to the ground.
Just flattening them instantly?
Or perhaps reversed entirely, launching them screaming into a ceiling composed of spinning monomolecular blades.
But the wild part is, the witches have to fight in this exact same environment.
And that is precisely the point. The environment itself is a participant in the ballet. The hazards ensure that the performance is as perilous as it is beautiful.
So a witch isn't just demonstrating her superiority over her opponent.
No, she is demonstrating her complete mastery over the deadly geometry of the arena itself. She has to choreograph her dodging, her parrying, and slicing around these invisible zones of inverted gravity and kinetic traps.
She actually uses them to her advantage.
Exactly. It proves her poise and grace under the most extreme, chaotic conditions imaginable.
So if she can gracefully lead an opponent into a snare and dance away completely untouched, the agony harvested from that kill is magnified by the sheer spectacle of the trap.
It elevates it from a mere cage match to high art. It's three-dimensional environmental combat.
But the arenas aren't the only places they perform, and this is the part that genuinely shocked me when I read it. They have away games.
The real space raids.
Yes. The witch cults do not just wait for victims to be brought to them. They act as highly elite, highly sought-after mercenaries.
We established earlier that the ruling cabals are the only faction with more prestige than the cults.
Right.
So when a cabal decides to launch a military raid into normal space, what they call real space, they frequently hire the Hecatari to form the vanguard of their assault.
And their currency of choice is incredibly grim. Like, they don't want gold or territory.
No, they're paid in slaves.
The lifeblood of Camorra. Slaves to be dragged back into the webway, thrown into the arenas, and processed through the Agony grid.
Exactly. And the logistics of these raids are fascinating because they don't fight like a conventional standing army.
There are no heavily armored infantry lines slowly advancing across a battlefield.
No, they use specialized anti-gravity vehicles. The primary ones mentioned in the sources are Raiders, Venoms, and Reaver jet bikes.
Which perfectly match their philosophy of combat, right? Fast, hypermobile, and entirely devoid of heavy defensive plating.
A Venom is essentially a razor-sharp anti-gravity sniper platform.
And a Raider operates almost like a flying Viking longship of horror. It's designed to drop specialized squads of witches directly into the heart of the enemy lines.
The phrase used in the text is a blizzard of violence.
A blizzard of violence.
Oh.
That paints such a picture.
They strike with terrifying speed, execute hit-and-run tactics, and leave absolute mountains of corpses in their wake before the enemy even has time to organize a defense.
But as incredibly deadly as these raids are, it was the final detail about these away missions that completely reframed the entire society for me.
The Camarite pleasure barges.
Yes, it is perhaps the single most revealing aspect of Drukhari psychology. The text says, often while Camarite pleasure barges hover above to watch the carnage.
It's hard to even process that level of depravity.
I just want you to sit with the sheer insanity of that visual for a second. Imagine a planetary defense force is getting utterly decimated. Cities are burning, soldiers are being vivisected at high speed, a literal blizzard of violence is tearing through a population.
Total devastation.
Right. And floating just above the atmospheric smoke, hovering safely out of range of anti-aircraft fire, are luxury anti-gravity yachts.
And inside these yachts, the ultra-wealthy elite citizens of Camorra are sipping drinks and lounging on silk cushions.
Watching the slaughter through high-powered viewing screens like it's a Sunday football game.
It completely recontextualizes the concept of warfare for this species.
It's the ultimate commodification of violence.
Exactly. For the Drukhari, this isn't tactical combat. It isn't about ideological conquest, defending borders, or asserting political dominance. It is a monetized VIP theater experience.
The battlefield is just another stage to them.
The Cabals are essentially funding a massive, live-action theatrical production, and the wealthy elite buy box seats to spectate the exquisite artistry of the Hecatari at work in an unscripted environment.
So the screaming, the burning cities, the desperate defensive stands of the victims, these are just special effects in a play put on for the amusement of sociopaths.
It strips away any dignity or martial honor from the concept of war.
You aren't dying for your country. You're dying because a wealthy alien on a yacht was bored and wanted to see a witch perform a 360-degree decapitation using a jet bike.
The sheer contempt they must have for other forms of life to treat a planetary invasion as a luxury cruise.
It really forces us to look at the underlying philosophical core of this entire society. We've talked about how they fight, why they fight, the drugs, the traps.
But this brings us to the ultimate horror of the witch cults.
We have to confront their internal state of mind, because it would be very easy to look at a society this ruthless and assume that the individuals within it are trapped.
But the reality presented in the lore is far more chilling.
Right. The witch cults are described as the living embodiment of the Drukhari's soul-crushing hedonism and their complete, unreserved embrace of evil.
Think about how almost all modern storytelling works. When we are presented with a society built on slavery and gladiatorial combat, our instinct is to look for a loophole.
We want to find a tragic backstory.
Exactly. We want to assume that these witches, raised from birth in this brutal system, are somehow victims of circumstance.
We expect a narrative where, like, a young gladiator looks up at the blood-soaked sands and thinks, I hate this. I wish I could escape this terrible system and live in peace.
We desperately want our villains to have a shred of conflicted humanity.
But we don't get that here, do we?
We are explicitly denied that comfort. The witch cults are definitively not tragic figures.
They are the product of a society that has consciously chosen to feed on pain, and they execute that choice with terrifying enthusiasm.
The final summation from the source is what gave me literal chills.
Yeah, it says they embrace this horrifying existence with a smile and a pirouette.
If we deeply analyze the philosophical weight of that specific phrase, it removes any ambiguity about their morality.
A pirouette is an act of deliberate, practiced physical beauty.
And a smile is an expression of deep internal satisfaction. They are not grimly doing what must be done to survive.
They aren't looking at the agony grid and saying, well, this is a heavy burden, but it is necessary for our people.
They aren't conflicted anti-heroes making hard choices.
Not at all. They are reveling in it.
They are the most enthusiastic champions of their society's darkest values. Their ultimate goal, their highest form of artistic expression, is defined as the perfect, agonizing kill.
When a culture decides that its highest form of art, its equivalent to the Mona Lisa or a Beethoven symphony, is the flawless execution of prolonged torture, you're looking at a society that has achieved a state of pure, unadulterated malevolence.
They aren't broken by their system. They are the system perfected and functioning exactly as designed.
It is incredibly rare to encounter a concept that just flat out presents a group as unrepentantly, joyfully evil without offering even a sliver of redemption.
And honestly, it makes them infinitely more terrifying.
They are carving you up, playing your nervous system like an instrument, turning your agonizing death into a theatrical masterpiece, and they are genuinely smiling while they do it.
Because they love their work.
And they love it because the audience hovering above in their pleasure barges demands nothing less.
The Hecatari are just a mirror reflecting the horrifying reality of Cumorah back at itself.
They are the apex of a culture that has decided empathy is an evolutionary defect and agony is the only currency that matters.
It is a comprehensive, inescapable ecosystem of horror. The architecture, the economy, the biology, and the culture are all perfectly aligned to maximize suffering.
Okay, let's take a deep breath and recap this journey because this has been intensely dark.
It really has.
We started by redefining the Hecatari. They aren't just gladiators. They are a vital societal survival mechanism.
They are the literal agony pump, keeping the dark city's spiritual and physical starvation at bay.
Then we examined their cutthroat, purely matriarchal hierarchy governed by succubi,
Who rule through a lethal combination of graceful martial superiority and hyper-paranoid political cunning, ensuring only the most capable and ruthless rise to the top.
We looked at the terrifying logistics of creating these virtuosos training from birth in life or death scenarios, utilizing surgical weapons like monomolecular blades and neuro-whips to prolong pain.
And relying heavily on the bioalchemists of the homunculi covens to artificially boost their speed to godlike levels.
We broke down the mechanics of their stages arenas filled with reality-bending hazards like kinetic inversion snares and gravity wells.
And then watched them export their art via high-speed, anti-gravity real space raids, turning warfare into a spectator sport for the ultra-rich.
And finally, we confronted the soul-crushing reality that they are entirely devoid of tragedy. They are not victims of a broken system. They are the joyful, willing enforcers of it.
A smile and a pirouette.
It leaves us with a complete picture. But, delving into the mechanics of this society leaves me with a very troubling, lingering question.
What's that?
Well, it's an extrapolation based entirely on the physics of their survival. We know they rely on consuming agony through ever-escalating, carefully choreographed spectacles. But basic psychology, whether human or Drukhari, dictates that any audience, over enough time, inevitably becomes desensitized to a stimulus.
Ah. The law of diminishing returns.
Exactly. If you eat the most decadent chocolate cake every single day, eventually you can't even taste the sugar.
Precisely. So if spinning blades and kinetic inversion snares are the baseline today.
And if launching a planetary invasion just so wealthy elites can sip wine on a luxury yacht while watching a blizzard of violence is considered standard entertainment.
What happens when that is no longer enough to sate the spiritual hunger of the masses?
If the perfect, agonizing kill loses its flavor, what incomprehensible reality-breaking horrors will the Hecatari have to invent tomorrow just to keep the dark city from eating itself?
That is a profoundly, deeply unsettling thought to end on, because the only direction they can go is worse.
Thank you for joining us on this incredibly dark deep dive. I hope this exploration of Comora's civic infrastructure gave you something fascinating to chew on. And as always, keep questioning the mechanics of the world around you.
And maybe, just maybe, next time you flip a light switch or turn on the tap, be grateful that our local utilities are powered by water and wind and not a kinetic conversion snare.
Take care, everyone.